Every superhero needs someone to fight, and Ultraman, the 40-meter-tall alien hero who remains one of the most popular characters in the Japanese tokusatsu genre, is no exception. Throughout the years, this hero and his brothers-in-arms have battled countless troublesome giant monsters called kaiju, of all shapes and sizes. But who was the first kaiju an Ultraman ever faced on screen? Well, we're going to be answering that question today, and once we do, we'll then be looking at that lucky monster's complete history, covering every appearance he's ever made, checking out the stories of how the folks behind the series brought him to life, and even looking at figures of this creature as well. That's all coming up next on today's episode of the Toku Professor. Hello Toku students around the world. Today's class is a pretty big one, because we're going to be looking at the first Ultraman monster ever, Bemular. Well, at least the first Ultraman monster to fight or appear alongside an Ultra hero on screen in a canonical episode. Don't worry, Ultra Q and Birth of Ultraman monsters, I haven't forgotten you. I learned a lot preparing this class, and I'm excited to share what I discovered with you. Let's begin right now. We'll start with the behind-the-scenes story of how Bemular became the first Ultraman Kaiju. Bemlar is the first villain of Ultraman, but if someone had moved a chair and the timeline shifted, he could have been the main hero of the whole show. Well, sort of. To be more specific, the main character of the show could have been named Bemular. That was the plan at first. At this stage, the working title for the series was Bemular Scientific Investigation Agency, and would have been about a reptilian bird monster who assisted a defense team called the SIA in defeating giant monsters. But ultimately, Tsuburaya Productions decided it might be too hard to tell the hero apart if it was a kaiju, so it was changed to a more just-looking, giant humanoid alien, and the name Bemular was dropped. I guess because they figured it only really fit a monster, or maybe they just liked the new name they came up with, Redman, better. But even the name Redman wouldn't make it into the final show. In the end, Ultraman is what Tsuburaya went with. But both of the hero's previous two names would end up still being put to use. Redman years later is the name of a protagonist of a super low-budget kaiju battling miniseries. I have a YouTube Shorts series about it, check it out if you're interested. And Bemular is the name of the first monster Ultraman fights in his show, who of course is the monster we're looking at today. His episode was technically written by Tetsuo Kenjo, but the man he learned from, Shinichi Sekizawa, known for writing several Godzilla films, was also involved. According to one site, Sekizawa had been convinced to write the script despite being worried he wouldn't be able to write a good story if it was for a show and not a movie. Well, turns out the director of episode 1, Hajime Tsuburaya, wasn't quite happy with Sekizawa's draft, so it was up to Tetsuo Kenjo to make some changes. Kenjo spent 3 days doing this, and ended up changing the script so much that none of the narration from Sekizawa's original remained. Kenjo's script is basically what we got, but a few more changes were made, such as Bemular's death scene, in which his travel sphere would not have just been destroyed by Ultraman, rather it would have just blown up due to Bemular's exhaustion. I guess they changed this to show off Ultraman's finishing move. Before we get into more info specific to Bemular, I thought you'd be interested to know that his episode, Ultra Operation No. 1, despite being the first chronologically in-universe, was not the first one filmed. And when the previous series, Ultra Q's final episode was cancelled because it didn't have any monsters to grab the attention of audiences, it began to look like the first episode of Ultraman wouldn't be done in time. Luckily, Eiji Tsuburaya and Takeshi Kokoi came up with the idea of having a stage play TV special to introduce the Ultraman characters, to air instead of episode 1, which gave the studio 1 more week to finish Bemular's episode up. Ultra Operation No. 1 was completed just 4 days before it was supposed to air. Talk about last minute. Toll Narita, responsible for designing the majority of the early Ultra Kaiju, was the man behind Bemular's concept art as well, and he gave the creature a lion-like face. His idea was that the suit actor who would wear the suit based on his design would put their hands up in Bemular's head and move the monster's horns, rather than the creature's stubby arms. Well, the stubby arms made it onto the suit based on the design, but the horns being able to move did not. So, the suit actor who wore the finished costume, Teruo Aragaki, just kept his arms still inside the suit. Bemular was designed to look as thin as possible in order to make it look less obvious that a human was inside. Ryosaku Takayama was the man who designed the suit based on Toll Narita's artwork. Yay, I've used these pictures of him next to the Bemular suit in so many videos, and now I actually get to use them in a video about the monster he's standing next to. Ah, the unexpected little joys of being a YouTuber. But that's not all, because I also get to show off a bunch more pictures I found of Takayama actually sculpting the creature. The images are kinda small and hard to see, but I thought you'd find them cool, cause I did. Here's the frame of the costume being built, and the claws, and the hands, and the many scales on the monster's back. That must have been annoying. In universe, they are supposedly poisonous, by the way, but I don't think we've seen anyone affected by them. This kaiju suit was built from foam rubber instead of urethane, because they knew it was going to be used for a bunch of water scenes. Bemular's roar was apparently created by taking Godzilla's roar, speeding it up, and playing it backwards. Bemular's name can be ported to the English language from Japanese several different ways, but I believe the spelling and pronunciation I've been using for this video is the most common. It's pronounced Bemura in Japan. I'm not sure what the name means, but the space amoeba from Toho's film Space Amoeba has also been referred to by this name, so maybe that's a clue. Last thing I want to mention before we move on, there's actually a blooper of Ultraman trying to throw Bemular, but he ends up uprooting a tree and falling over at the end. Guess the suit was pretty heavy, even with no one in it. Okay, we now finally get to analyze the first episode of Ultraman, or at least Bemular's role in it. What a big moment for the channel. Let's do it well. After the opening credits, the first thing shown in the entire show, aside from outer space, was Bemular's blue travel sphere. Wait, Bemlar has a travel sphere just like an Ultraman? That's kind of strange when you think about it. He looked like your average reptilian monster, but he had the ability to travel through space in a sphere at Mach speeds. And what's more, he may have been a lot more intelligent than he looked too. As Ultraman revealed a little later on, he was tasked with taking Bemular to a place called the Space Graveyard, but the kaiju was somehow able to escape him, forcing the Ultra to pursue him to Earth. The Ultra called him a demon-like monster that disrupts peace in the universe. Definitely doesn't sound like a mindless animal that accidentally causes destruction, despite his appearance. There's some confusion about the space graveyard Ultraman mentioned he was taking Bemular to. Some sources state that he's referring to the monster graveyard, a place where the dead kaiju go to dwell peacefully that has been featured several times in later shows, and even in episode 35 of this show. But some sources say that the space graveyard is a completely different place, where evil monsters are faced with capital punishment for disturbing the peace, according to the laws of the Land of Light. If this latter explanation is true, Bemular is probably a really bad dude, but we don't really know enough details to know exactly how villainous he is. Anyway, Bemular fled through space in his travel sphere, and though Ultraman was close behind him, eventually he was able to put enough separation between himself and the hero that he was able to hide in a lake called Lake Ryugamori. Meanwhile, Ultraman got into a head-on collision with Hayata, so that had to be sorted out before the episode could go back to focusing on Bemular. Perhaps if the monster had just stayed down under the water a bit longer, he could have eventually just escaped without being noticed, but whether out of curiosity or because he needed air or something, he decided to poke his head out, and was spotted by the SSSP and quite a few others who were searching for Hayata. It's unknown if Ultraman knew of his presence in the lake before, but now quite a lot of people knew he was there. After he sunk back into the water, Captain Muromatsu commented that Bemular seemed to really like this lake. Hayata/Ultraman informed the other members of the SSSP that if Bemular wasn't taken out now while he was still resting, there would be a lot of trouble, and he came up with the idea of taking a submarine down to the bottom of the lake to flush the monster out, so the others could attack it in their jet VTOL. The first part of the plan, called Ultra Operation Number 1, went well. Hayata hit the sleeping monster with a torpedo and it popped out of the water again. But the missile Captain Muromatsu fired at the creature seemed to have no effect, and the kaiju went right back underwater. So they repeated the process twice more, and were able to get some good hits in. But then, Bemular suddenly almost knocked the jet VTOL out of the air with a beam attack called the Pale Heat Wave. He then sunk back under the water, and for some reason, Hayata ended up piloting the submarine right into the monster's mouth. He looked like he was looking where he was going, but I guess his mind was occupied, since a lot had happened to him over the last few hours. Bemular started to come ashore with his catch, but the VTOL was able to get him to release the vessel. Unfortunately, it landed on land, and Hayata was knocked out. Technically, he probably should have been dead, but instead he was now 2 for 2 for surviving violent crashes. Bemular fired another heatwave attack at the VTOL, and then lit the submarine on fire as he approached it. But Hayata was able to get the top hatch open, and for the very first time ever, held up the beta capsule and transformed into Ultraman to battle Bemular. He rushed forward and tried to overpower his monstrous opponents, but Bemular proved to be very strong and pushed him back. Ultraman was able to toss the creature to the side, and the two began to roll around on the ground, each trying to overpower the other. They ended up in the lake, with Bemular looking to be in control, but Ultraman broke free and the fight went on. Ultraman headbutted his opponent and then grabbed his tail and started tugging it, but at that point his color timer began to blink as his energy began to deplete. Bemular then fired his pale heat wave again, but Ultraman dodged it, even though if you slow down the footage it doesn't quite look like he did. The hero then flew through the air and slammed the kaiju from the back, and then picked Bemular up and tossed him, without picking up a tree in the process, of course. He beat the monster up a little more and then tossed it in the lake, and Bemular sunk back to the bottom, looking defeated. But then, after a few little explosions, suddenly the creature re-emerged in his travel sphere, ready to make another getaway. But Ultraman was ready for him. For the very first time in the show, the hero showed off his Spacium beam attack and instantly blew Bemular and his travel sphere up, ending his first fight on Earth on a high note. And that's how both his and Bemular's career began. What could possibly be next for the space monster? I'm sure he thought Tsuburaya Productions would probably give him a chance at a rematch in the show, being Ultraman's first opponent and all. Plus, his suit had survived filming. The future looked bright. What could possibly go wrong? So yeah, I'm pretty excited. Just received instructions to remodel Bemular into this new monster called Gango. It probably won't be easy, and I might have to chop the current suit up a bunch to make it work, but yeah, looking forward to it.
What?
Yep, after episode 1, Bemular's career plans came crashing down after it was decided to modify his suit into the kaiju Gango. Now, okay, you may be thinking, that's not too big of a deal. Red King became Aberrus for a while, and they brought him back. Well, Bemular, it seems, for some reason, wasn't as popular as some of the other kaiju from his same show, despite being the first, because there doesn't seem to have been any real effort made to bring him back for any later episodes of Ultraman, or Ultra 7, or Return of Ultraman, or Ultraman Ace, or Ultraman Taro, except in a flashback, or Leo, or The Ultraman, or 80. He wasn't even brought back for any new footage in Ultra Fight or Redman. He never came back for a major appearance in any Showa main series shows. And the main series shows of the Heisei era didn't treat him any better, at least at first. Old kaiju started frequently returning, starting with Ultraman Max, but Bemular wasn't included in Max, or Mabius, or Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle, or UGMMB Neo. But then, in 2009, this movie happened. And what is this? Or rather, who is this? Are you seeing this? After not appearing in the main series for 43 years, that's right, almost a half century, the first monster Ultraman fought finally got his chance to return in Mega Monster Battle Ultra Galaxy Legends the movie. And, especially compared to a lot of the other kaiju in this film, he actually had a decently important role in the movie, both being one of the kaiju that made up the gigantic Belyudra, specifically one of his fingers, and more importantly being the first kaiju to appear and fight in Ultra, helping to pull audiences back into the world of the Land of Light. He actually almost didn't make it into the movie. Zeton was originally slated to appear at the beginning of the film instead. I'm glad they made the change. Zeton has appeared in so many shows, I think it was totally fair to give Bemular his role this time around. This was said to have been suit sculptor Fuyuki Shinada's idea. Thank you very much, sir. I've heard conflicting info on where the suit for this appearance came from. One source says it was modified from a suit used for attractions despite being very worn, which was given the ability to tilt its head up. This is the one I personally believe. While the other says the suit was brand new. Interestingly, the suit they used had arms that could actually be controlled by the suit actor, unlike the original costume. By the way, the suit actor is unidentified for this movie. It seems that the entirety of Bemular's fight, along with basically everything else in this movie, was filmed in front of a green screen. Okay, let's see what Bemular did in Ultra Galaxy Legends the movie. The beginning of the film was basically a modernized version of the beginning of Ultraman Episode 1. A blue glowing light was shown flying through space, being chased by a red glowing light. I'll bet you can guess who each of these two were. Both headed toward this planet called Planet Alpha to battle. The first revealed itself to be Bemular, while his pursuer was, of course, Ultraman. Mabius. Did I trick you? Mabius leapt toward the kaiju, dodging several mini pale heatwave blasts, and kicked the creature in the chest. The monster responded with more blasts of blue energy, which Mabius showily avoided, and then the hero leapt off an asteroid to engage in close-range combat. Mabius then dodged some more blue blasts, slicing one in half with his Mabium blade. He then rolled forward and fired his Mabium shoot at the creature, and this Bemular was blown up. Maybe if you'd moved Bemular, that wouldn't have happened. Upon rewatching the opening scene, it looks to me like Bemular may not have been in his travel sphere this time around, and somehow may have actually been flying through space on his own. Not sure how he was able to do that. but I guess him having a travel sphere is also confusing. Following this movie, we got a bit of a Bemular renaissance, with the kaiju making quite a few appearances, probably because they had a suit they could use now. He next appeared in Ultra Zone, but we'll discuss that in the minor appearances section. So for now, let's move on to Ultra Zero Fight. Other than the kaiju apparently using the same suit from the movie for this appearance, and appearing in an episode written by Yuji Kobayashi, I couldn't find any behind-the-scenes info of note for this one, so let's dive right into the story. At the beginning of the first episode of this mini-series, a Bemular in the monster graveyard, not the space graveyard, who'd been revived by an alien bat, teamed up with Gudon, Telestan, and Sadola against Ultraman Zero, and initiated the battle with a pale heatwave burst. But Zero just blocked the attack with his hand, and transformed into his strong Corona form. Within moments, he was able to take out Sadola and Gudon, and he wasn't bothered at all when Bemular teamed up with Telestan to launch more fire at him. He switched to his Luna Miracle form and slugged the two monsters with a fury of sluggers, which caused both of them to blow up. Maybe you shouldn't have messed with Ultraman Zero, Bemular. The Bemular was super briefly shown after being transformed into a Spark Doll in Ultraman Ginga, and then in Ultraman Ginga S, he appeared in the flesh again. For Ginga S, the kaiju was played by Yoshihiro Rikimaru. Here he is playing the kaiju behind the scenes. I'm assuming the same suit from his previous appearances was used once more, but I couldn't find any confirmation of this. The Ginga S episode he appeared in, A Life to Regain, was written by Hisako Kurosawa, and seems to maybe have had a pun built into it. There is a famous Ultra monster with a name very similar to Bemular that appeared alongside him for this outing. The powerful bird-like kaiju Bemstar, or Bemusuta, as his name is pronounced in Japanese. What do you think? Think they made these two kaijus allies on purpose since their names were similar? Bemular appeared kind of out of nowhere in this episode, hitting Ultraman Victory in the back with his pale heatwave as he was trying to beat Bemstar up. Seeing Victory now had two space monsters to deal with, Hikaru decided to help out and transformed into Ultraman Ginga. But before he could get there, Bemular and Bemstar got some strong hits in on Victory, though Bemular also rammed his friend by accident. Ginga arrived and lunged at the two monsters, and wait, how did that happen? They teleported? Turns out these two kaiju had been lived from Spark Dolls by Vorst, the alien Guts, and since he'd been given a special Chibul circuit from Exceller, monsters he lived could now perform special powerful techniques, such as teleport, or even split into two, as Bemular did. The two Bemulars fired glowing energy from their mouths, which tied Ginga and Victory up. Bemstar was then commanded to finish the two Ultras off with a ram, but that just hurt them a little and broke them out of their chains. This has nothing to do with Bemular, but I thought you'd be interested to see how they filmed this shot. Great job, Bemstar, you did it, buddy! Bemstar was able to swallow a beam from Ginga through his stomach gorge, and the fight went on. One of the two Bemulars stood alongside Bemstar and fired another orange energy beam at Ginga, while the other one shot at Victory. Both beams barely missed. The Ultras were cornered, but Hikaru had come up with a plan. When the Bemulars fired their glowing beams, Ginga and Victory flew up into the air, and all the monsters were tied up, with one of the Bemulars being lassoed to Bemstar. But you'd think that the other Bemular on his own wouldn't be too bothered by this, since the kaiju can't really use his arms anyway, but I guess you'd be wrong, since Ginga was now able to easily finish him off. And since the other Bemular was just an illusion or something, it disappeared when the other one went down. And Bemstar went down too, or I guess I should say, went up. The next main series show was Ultraman X, and Bemular showed up in 2 episodes of this show, as well as in the theme song. In episode 1, he was, appropriately, the first monster to wake up as a result of the Ultra Flare from a Spark Doll that had been lying among some rocks. Interestingly, the entire reason the Ultra Flare happened was because Griza, who, much like Bemular, had a travel sphere, though it was purple instead of blue, was thrown into the sun. Episode 20, a tribute episode to Ultraman Nexus, written by Hirotoshi Kobayashi, gave the kaiju a slightly more prominent role, pitting him against Ultraman Nexus as a reference to when Nexus battled the kaiju Beast the One, who in turn had been based on Bemular. Bemular was included at the suggestion of the production supervisor, Sei Okazaki. Here's how it all went down. Bemular popped out of a lake in Alberta, Canada, the lake being a reference to the one from Ultraman, and attacked a campground where the family of Sayuri Tachibana was camping. Off-screen, he sent a canoe flying which bonked Tachibana's daughter in the head, and then on-screen, he launched a pale heatwave blast into the center of the lake for some reason. He started to approach her family, and their mom, who was in Japan, was in no position to help them, at least at first. But then she was lucky enough to have the Evil Truster from Ultraman Nexus appear in front of her. Talk about plot armor. And she transformed into Ultraman Nexus, escaped from her current predicament, and flew all the way to Canada in time to save her family from Bemular. Nexus pulled the monster around, and later picked the kaiju up and tossed him, and then apparently defeated Bemular off-screen. Does that mean the kaiju was knocked out? Or perhaps blew up? No idea. All we know is that the monster was defeated. Bemular had now made multiple reappearances in shows, but notably he hadn't got a new form yet in any of them. Ultraman Orb changed that by introducing a new type of Bemular called Empowered Bemular in episode 18, which was written by Daiki Sato. Masayoshi Takesue, the director, was the one who wanted to include Bemular, and so, since it was Ultraman's 50th anniversary at the time, it was decided the kaiju would be brought back again, but they gave him a new form with horns to spice things up a bit. Masayuki Goto, the man behind the designs of all the new generation Ultras, designed this new version of Bemular. I couldn't quite determine how they built the suit, though I assume they just used the old one and modified it. Kazunori Yoku was the suit actor this time around. For this appearance, Bemular was given an alien master, which kaiju, especially space kaiju, have been known to get sometimes. Bemular's master was an alien chapelet. Uh-oh.
Professor, I can't believe it.
Oh, no.
You're actually covering another one of my monsters. First Gyrodorus, then Duraco, and now Bemular. I think you've merited another gift. Please accept this medal.
What? How'd you put this on me without my noticing? Also, is this really a medal? It looks like a necklace.
I thought it could pass as a medal. You know, like those Olympic gold ones. But if you don't think it fits your vibe, just throw it out and move on with your life. Anyway, farewell.
I really don't get what that guy's deal is. Anyway, in the episode, an alien chapelet was giving a bunch of people these necklaces with blue gems of some sort. Wait, why does that look so familiar? I guess I'm just a little flustered right now. Which he used to absorb their energy in order to awaken his empowered Bemular. After his horns lit up, this version of the monster was able to unleash a much more devastating version of his heat ray, called the Hyper Pale Heat Wave. Luckily, Ultraman Orb quickly arrived to battle the beast. The rather stiff kaiju wasn't able to do much, as Orb landed several physical attacks, but he stayed upright even after getting battered by a powerful kick. Orb tried a Sparian Ray next, but Bemular used his horns to absorb the attack without being harmed whatsoever, and used this energy to fire another Hyper Pale Heat Wave, which knocked Orb down. The kaiju then started stomping on Orb, but the Ultra broke free and tossed the horned monster over his shoulder. The kaiju then started launching his super powerful beam again, and eventually he was able to get what at least looked like a direct hit, but the hero looked unaffected this time. But then, the monster rammed Orb so hard he destroyed the road below him. Ugh, that's gonna make my commute tomorrow a lot more difficult. Orb's ring-shaped color timer began blinking as the Ultra grunted in pain. Empowered Bemular was doing quite well. But then, Orb switched to his origin form, and based on the context of the episode, you could just tell the momentum was about to shift. Orb slashed the kaiju with his Orb Caliber, and used it to block a Hyper Heatwave beam. Orb was then somehow able to break both of the monster's horns with one slash, taking away the monster's source of power. Then came the finishing blow. The kaiju blew up, just as his master, Alien Chapelet, was simultaneously defeated down below. That was the only time Empowered Bemular appeared. Following this, we got to see regular Bemular a few more times.
I'm back!
With the next one being the 18th episode of Ultraman Taiga, brought to us by writer Junichiro Ashiki. Yuto Nagachi got to play the monster this time around. Let's see what Taiga has in store for us. Bemular appeared right near the beginning of this episode, and battled Ultraman Fuma at night. Off-screen, Bemular somehow knocked the Blue Ultra to the ground, and followed up with his Pale Heat Wave, which Fuma dodged. After getting behind the monster, Fuma traded places with Ultraman Titus. Bemular looked a little surprised to see this powerful-looking Ultra, and fired another Heat Wave shot. But Titus ran up and lifted the monster, and threw him on the ground. To finish things up, he fired an Astro Beam at the kaiju, and Bemular was dead before the theme song could even play. That was quick. Next up, we've got Bemular's interesting appearance in Ultraman Decker, which occurred in The Destructive Monster Awakens, which was written by Takao Nakano. The destructive monster in the title is not in fact Bemular, as Bemular didn't actually even appear in the flesh in Ultraman Decker. Rather, he appeared as a Guts Select VR simulation. Well, a simulation in the show. In real life, he was portrayed with a suit as usual, which was worn by Akira Okabe. In the show, the pretend Bemular appeared in a heavily populated area, and used his Pale Heat Wave to create a big explosion. And he wasn't the only threatening space creature in the area. Also present in a nearby building was Alien Chapley again.
Wow, you're giving me another shout-out, my brother from another mother? I can't wait to tell the missus I'm famous now. Thanks much.
Listen, sir, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Maybe you're somehow an actual genuinely nice fellow, but you're kind of strange, and could you maybe not come back and interrupt my classes anymore, please?
Oh. So that's what you actually thought and wanted this whole time? Oh, okay then.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him take over the class again? I'll have to think about this later. Let's move on. The pretend alien Chapley, who most likely was included in this episode as a reference to the one from Orb, was chased outside by Kanata, who took it out. But suddenly, the giant Bemular stomped right over to his vicinity and peered down at him. Despite being in a simulation, Kanata's Ultra D flasher began to appear so he could transform into Ultraman Decker. But of course it wasn't needed, so Kanata became distracted trying to make the device go away before the rest of his team saw it. As a result, the simulation Bemular was able to cause Kanata to fail the simulated mission. Having done his job, the virtual training kaiju then disappeared. To finish up this section of the video, as of early 2025 when this video is coming out, Bemular's most recent major appearance is in the 2024 Netflix original film Ultraman Rising. Excluding the ones that only appeared as cameos, Bemular was one of 2 returning Ultraman kaiju in the movie, alongside Naranga. They were both chosen for similar reasons. Bemular because he was the first monster Ultraman ever fought, and Naranga because he was the first monster that wasn't from space that Ultraman ever fought. Director Shannon Tyndall drew up this concept art for the monster's appearance in the film, and here's what the final version of the kaiju ended up looking like. Bemular appeared for a brief amount of time in the movie, appropriately right at the beginning. He was shown attacking the parking lot of a factory and roaring, before turning around to face Ultraman, who emerged from a nearby cloud of dust. We don't know exactly what ended up happening to the monster on this day, but by the time Ken Sato became the new Ultraman, the KDF had apparently taken Bemular out, based on graphics seen at their headquarters. Bemular was also present on a Kaiju Alert logo shown in the movie. Okay, time for minor appearances. We've got a lot to talk about here. Even though it isn't first in chronological order, we'll start with Ultrazone, since I mentioned it already. In episode 21 of this show, Bemular, being played by Hiroyuki Arai, appeared from his travel sphere in the middle of a city, and in episode 22, the story continued. The monster fired his pale heat wave and lumbered through the city, causing much destruction. 4 people below devised a plan to try and knock half of an empty skyscraper down on the creature to defeat it with a time bomb, but the episode didn't reveal whether or not they were successful. The kaiju also appeared in an eye catch in episode 13 of the show. Though I was unable to spot him, the kaiju is apparently present somewhere in the very strange 2003 special, Ultraman Legend The King's Jubilee, being played by Nakano Hikari, and he's supposedly visible on one of these monitors in the Veracron hunting episode of Mega Monster Rush Ultra Frontier, but again, I couldn't spot him myself. Unsurprisingly, stock footage of the monster's first appearance, since it was also Ultraman's first appearance, has been reused before, such as an Ultraman Monster Movie feature, which even included the kaiju on the poster, and Superior 8 Ultra Brothers. The kaiju played an important role in Marvel's Rise of Ultraman, and appeared on several covers for both The Rise of Ultraman and The Trials of Ultraman. Other comics/mangas have featured the first Ultraman kaiju as well, including one called Ultraman to Earth, which depicted the story of how the original Bemular escaped from Ultraman. In this manga, which likely isn't considered canon now, the monster killed Ultraman's friend, Ultraman Claude, who gave Ultraman the Beta Capsule before he passed away. Bad Bemular. Several Pachimon cards resemble Bemular, and the monster has also appeared in several live stage shows. And one of them, which was shown on April 12th and 13th, 2003, gave Bemular a brand new form called Evolved Bemular, which I guess technically was probably his first alternate form ever. It was a 6-legged monstrosity, similar to Zogu from Ultraman Gaia. The Ultraman anime has a character named Bemular, obviously named after the monster. However, this being was not the kaiju, but I won't reveal who his true identity was. As we mentioned, Beast the One from Ultraman Nexus is based on Bemular, but so is the monster Yana Kargi from Ultraman Taiga, who notably was sealed in the same lake Bemular hid in the episode meant to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Ultra series. The kaiju Mito from the PC game Ultra Strategy Mobilization of the Science Patrol was also based on Bemular. In fact, modeler Yoshihide Inada said that he imagined this kaiju eventually becoming Bemular. Bemular's travel sphere also appeared at the end of this game. The kaiju has been present in several other video games as well,
back.
such as the one just called Ultraman for the PS2, in which he was playable, as well as both Mega Monster Battle Ultra Coliseum Wii games, Ultra Kaiju Monster Rancher as a cookie, and in the arcade game from 1991, also just called Ultraman. Listed here are all the other minor appearances for the monster that I'm aware of, but I probably missed some. If you know of any more, be sure to leave a comment. In fact, even if you don't, be sure to leave a comment, because doing so supposedly helps the video get shown to more people. Okay, let's discuss Bemular toys now. First up, these are the Bemular figures I have in my personal collection. I have the newer, tall, 1994 mold Ultra Monster series figure. There is an older one than this, I've sold a few on my eBay store. And I have the Ultra Monster 500 Spark Doll of the monster as well. On my eBay store, which you can visit by clicking the link in the description by the way, it's filled with tons of Toku figures you may be interested in adding to your collection. I used to have an empowered Bemular, but it eventually sold. Luckily though, I did take a quick video of it before shipping it out, since I knew I'd be making a History of Bemular video soon. There are many other types of Bemular figures out there too, that I don't currently have, including a Kaiju Remix figure, a small figure that appears to come with candy, a Bullmark figure, a Seismic Toys figure that hasn't come out yet, a partially blue Ultra Monster series version released for Ultraman's 35th anniversary, an eraser, cards, dioramas, an X Plus figure, and more. Collecting them all would take a lot of searching, that's for sure. And with that, we have now finished looking at the entire history of Bemular, at least for now. Be sure to like, subscribe, and...
I have returned.
Oh, Alien Chaplay.
I am appalled with how you treated me earlier. After I've treated you so well, you dare to forever ban me from the premises?
Listen, I probably should have ordered...
I'm sorry, Professor, but you have left me no choice. I must raise this school to the ground.
What?
I shall use the necklace you still wear to drain your energy and reawaken Bemular, and he shall carry out my vengeance.
What? No, please!
All right, Bemular, do your thing.
Huh? This doesn't look like a kaiju attack.
Of course not, Professor. It's a Bemular-themed disco party to show my appreciation.
Huh?
I knew what you said earlier was a joke, so I thought I'd play my own little harmless prank as well.
Harmless? Harmless? You scared me half to...
All right, time for you to show us your dance moves, Professor.
But... Life of a Toku Professor. See you next time, students. Okay, fine, Mr. Chaplay. I'll do...
Oh yeah, he's in no shape to dance. Forgot I made this party by draining a bunch of his energy. Oh well, he's kind of a party pooper anyway. All right, everybody, let's do the wave. The pale heat wave. Ha ha!